Hello, everyone, and thank you again for coming back potentially to my debate. Here, I'm going to be responding to Emily Nelson's rebuttal to my initial debate. So, kind of a meta rebuttal to a rebuttal, which was my original debate was in support of states surrendering their sovereignty in order to comply with international humanitarian law. And although I enjoyed listening to Emily's rebuttal, I would like to more deeply share my perspective as to why humanitarian issues should be supported above a country's sovereignty. So, the first issue Emily brought up was the issue of national stability. I get that following or giving up national sovereignty to follow international humanitarian law might seem like a loss of control at first, but in reality, it can actually help build long term stability within a country. It can help boost legitimacy and international support. So when a state follows humanitarian law, it gains credibility both at home and abroad. Treating people fairly in conflict, so like protecting civilians and not torturing prisoners, helps make a country look more responsible and trustworthy on the global stage. So this can lead to more diplomatic support. It could lead to foreign investment and could even lead to humanitarian aid. Breaking international humanitarian law can lead to sanctions, global condemnation, or even military intervention, right? So think of like a situation in like places in like Syria. States that adhere to international humanitarian law are less likely to provoke these kinds of consequences. And that, in and of itself, would destabilize a nation and weaken its government. Um, Another point that Emily brought up was in regards to cultural autonomy. So it can support cultural autonomy by fostering a sense of national unity. So adhering to international standards can help a country build a sense of pride and unity. It shows a commitment to justice, shows a commitment to human dignity. And that can be especially important in post conflict societies that are just trying to heal from past wounds. It'll help create a shared identity based on values that people can rally behind. And that, I think, can make the country stronger internally. So, while giving up sovereignty to comply with international humanitarian law might seem like a sacrifice, it can lead to greater stability. It can lead to building trust. It can prevent conflict. It can strengthen their legal system. And most importantly, it can help prevent the kind of crises that undermine that stability. The next point that Emily brought up that I'd like to address is the issue of inconsistent enforcement of international humanitarian law. Enforcing humanitarian law more consistently is a significant challenge. I won't argue with that. But there are several ways that we can work towards making it more effective. One of those ways is by strengthening international legal systems, like the ICC, for example. So, one of the key ways to enforce humanitarian law is through institutions like that, which are technically responsible for prosecuting war crimes. For this to be more effective, though, more countries need to support the court by ratifying the Rome Statute or providing the political backing needed to do its job. And creating more special tribunals, like the ones we learned about regarding Yugoslavia or Rwanda, that can help bring more targeted accountability. It'll allow countries to like rewrite their history that was potentially created by larger, more powerful nations, and then that therefore would positively impact international law. Also, it can help reform. We can help reform international institutions. So, like the UN Security Council, it's often struggled to address humanitarian violations, especially when powerful members like the U.S., China, Russia, they have conflicting interests, right? And they're going to work from a point of those individual interests. So one way to help minimize the ability of powerful members' ability to dominate would be to maybe remove the ability to veto from the permanent members. As we've recently seen, right, the U.S. was solely responsible for the delay of humanitarian support in the Gaza crisis. I think also another way to reform the United Nations Security Council would be to expand the council to incorporate all UN members. The Security Council should be moving towards humanitarian issues as a global issue, not an issue that has individual interests. So I believe that all nations should have equal say in world affairs. Power should be returned to smaller countries so that they can prevent so that we can prevent the continued cycle of countries such as the U.S., China, Russia dominating conversations on the maintenance of global peace. Reforming the council would help. And the last point I want to address of Emily's was the idea of having a balance between the two, meaning a balance between sovereignty and a balance between complying with international humanitarian law. She shares that states should adopt a specific measure that would align with their national specific interests, whether it be economic, political, or strategic. And although I get and respect the idea of states working to support their interests, right, putting economic, political, or strategic interests above humanitarian interests sends a clear message that financial interests are valued above the interests of human lives. And as we've seen through several projects throughout the history of global expansion, right? So if we think about like the colonial project, we think about the development project, or we think about the globalization project, governments have chosen profits over people time and time again. So that's further perpetuated national dependency on smaller countries on larger, more powerful ones. And that in and of itself would impede on a nation's sovereignty. So in short, the concept of following international humanitarian law should be above all others, should be above sovereignty. As financial and political interests have dominated the world's history, we can see that it's come at the expense of human lives and well-being. It's negatively affected countless people, negatively affected countless countries, and only further perpetuates the chokehold that these large, powerful countries have on the globe. We should be moving towards a time of like full global cooperation with international courts, cooperation with international laws and initiatives, where we'll finally be able to see global interests, i.e. human interests, would be paramount. Thank you.